If you still haven't heard of IRAC by this time in law school, let me be the first to introduce you to the concept. If you haven't heard about it yet, you will very soon. Well, you're going to hear about it in this video. IRAC is a method of organizing written analysis, but it's no ordinary method. It is the prescribed structure for legal writing, and it's firmly established in law schools and law practices and courts throughout the country, and with very good reason. IRAC is a structure that allows your reader, whether your reader is a law professor or an attorney or a judge, it allows your reader to easily and systematically evaluate your analysis of every legal issue that you address. So for that reason, IRAC is the language of lawyers, and it's going to be your language for legal writing from now on. Now, IRAC, of course, is an acronym. It stands for Issue, Rule, Analysis or Application, and Conclusion. So that's what IRAC stands for. And there are several variations of IRAC. Some of the ones I've heard of are CRAC, or CRAC if you prefer, CREAC, there's an IREAC, there's even this one here. I'm not sure how to pronounce this one, IRAC, right? And there are probably others as well. But we're just going to deal with the plain vanilla, just IRAC. Now, after you master this, you have my blessing to make adjustments and use whichever format works best for you. But for now, we're just going to be talking about the plain vanilla IRAC. So let's look at the parts of IRAC. And we'll start with the issue. The issue is the question that we're trying to answer. It may be a question that your client has asked you directly, like, am I guilty of murder? Or it may be a question that you've identified yourself as being essential to solving your client's problem. So for example, if you have a client who is being evicted from his apartment, you might identify the issue as being whether the landlord has given your client proper notice to evict. All right? But the issue isn't just, is he guilty or is notice proper? The issue should be stated in terms of the relevant law and the relevant facts. The relevant law and the relevant facts, right? The issue should identify the particular circumstances of your question. If you were, for example, if you were to ask, as your issue, is Dave guilty? Oops, there's an L in there. Is Dave guilty? If this is your issue, well, that doesn't tell the reader anything about the circumstances of your question. Right? It doesn't say under which law he might be guilty. Maybe he's guilty under California law, but not under Florida law. And it doesn't say what happened that might make him guilty or not guilty. But if you ask, is Dave guilty of murder? So if you say, is Dave guilty of murder under California law, let's say when he shot Vic because, let's say he thought that Vic was a burglar, because he thought Vic was a burglar. All right? Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Now you're telling the reader that we're talking about California law and that we're talking about the specific circumstance of a defendant shooting a person whom the defendant believes is a burglar. Okay, now you could also write this issue as a statement. This is written as a question, but you could also write the issue as a statement rather than as a question. So you could write, let's erase this and say, the issue is whether Dave is guilty of murder under California law when he shot Vic because he thought Vic was a burglar. In this case, if you write it this way, it wouldn't be a question, it would be a sentence. So you can write an issue as a question, or you can write it as an issue statement. Either way, note that we're posing the issue in terms of the relevant law, California law, and the relevant facts. When he shot Vic because he thought Vic was a burglar. All right, so an issue should be stated in terms of the relevant law and the relevant facts to let the reader know the circumstances of your question, of the issue. All right, the next component of IRAC is the rule. All right, this is the rule that's guiding our legal analysis. And the rule can come from any primary legal authority. It comes from any primary legal authority. But IRAC requires that you give the rule itself, not just a citation to the rule. I don't know, have you ever seen a sign, for example, that tells you you have to do something, or that you can't do something, and then it has some obscure legal citation next to it? So, for example, you may have seen something like this, right? A picture of a cigarette, a lit cigarette, and then a line through it. And then the sign says, no smoking. And it has some obscure legal citation underneath it, like a Health and Safety Code, section 26.D or 6, or something like that, right? And that's it. That's all the sign says. Well, what is that? Now, does the statute say that smoking is against the law always? Is that what Health and Safety Code section 26.D6 says? Or does that statute say that smoking just isn't allowed here? Well, if so, why not? I mean, is it because we're within 200 yards of a school? Is it because it's near the entrance of a building? The reader just has to take the sign maker's word that smoking is not allowed within view of this sign, and that there's some legal reason for it. Well, in IRAC, we don't make the reader take our word for anything. We give the rule itself so that we can show the reader, not just tell the reader, we can show the reader that what we say is true. All right, the next component of IRAC is the analysis. The analysis is the most important part of IRAC. The analysis is where we apply the rule. We apply the rule to the specific facts. We apply the rule to the facts of our circumstance. And by doing that, we show, again, we're showing, we're not just telling, we're showing that by applying the rule to our facts, we're likely to get to a particular outcome. And the conclusion is just how we wrap up our analysis, right? Sometimes the answer is obvious, but sometimes it's a close call. And the answer itself is usually not as important as the analysis. But we do need to give an answer. What is the most likely outcome? That's what the conclusion tells us, the most likely outcome. So this is IRAC.